Hi guys, welcome to this new channel, MMA Animated. So today, there's a lot of things we have to talk about. There's a lot of things following what happened in UFC 322, and then we also have UFC Qatar. There's a lot of things we need to discuss about the new champ. We have the new champ, Islam Makhachev, and then what's the fate, what's next for the welterweight division, and what is next for Islam Makhachev in terms of the contenders, who should get the spot to challenge him next. And there's a lot of movement in the the division, and then there's also changes in the pound for pound list. So we're going to discuss all these things in this video, right? Last week at UFC 322, we actually witnessed greatness, Islam Makhachev successfully dethroned Jack Della Magdalena. I know some people criticize that performance, but you cannot really blame Islam for that. It's supposed to be, if you want a competitive fight, it takes two, So we all know that Islam was going to go there and just do takedown and control, maybe submit Jack. So it's on Jack to actually defend takedown. And people often forgot Islam Makhachev at 155, he already faced at least two very good strikers in Volk and in Porrier, and both time we did get an amazing fight, especially when they managed to stop the takedown. And some people thought Jack would do the same, but by comparing Jack to Porrier, you can see there's a big experience gap right there. I'm pretty sure Jack can knock anyone out. However, that is where we can see the brilliance of Team Khabib and Islam Makhachev. So, as a pound for pound king, what do you expect? Islam, showed amazing fight IQ. So we all know that the boxer is dependent. For example, any boxer is dependent on their feet. They got their power from their feet. And Islam, knowing that, hit and then tenderize that calf until there is no power left. And I think that was a very good game plan. You cannot blame the guy for executing their game plan, man. Seriously. And hats off to Makhachev. He really did it. He is now the 11th double champ in the UFC, the first for Russian, the first for Muslim, and you have to give him his flowers, he took out a number of win streaks already. He took out Oliveira, 11 or 10 win streak, Volk 22, and now Jack 18. Remember, Jack has not lost for 10 years, my friend. 10 years. So, hats off. Seriously, you have to give Islam flowers, man. Seriously. So now Islam actually has tied Anderson Silva with 16 win streak, the longest win streak in the UFC to date, and the only person that I can remember that ever get that close was Kamaru Usman. It was unfortunate what happened to Usman because of Leon head kick. So it has been a while since this win streak has been broken, and Islam is actually there. He tied it, and one more, basically he would break the record. So we are not talking about some welterweight champion or some lightweight champion going up and then just got the welterweight, we are actually witnessing the rise of the new GOAT of MMA. Some people argue that Anderson Silva has more title fight and then he defended more, but I don't know whether people are forgetting that Anderson Silva actually got his first title shot. I think it was on his second UFC fight, whereas Makhachev actually got his first title shot, I believe, when he had 10 or 11 win streak, which is on its own already impressive. And you shouldn't compare Anderson Silva and Islam because they are both in different eras, like I said. And yeah, so whatever it is, some people have a bias against the Muslims and everything, but you have to give Islam his flowers, man. It's time for people to give respect to Makhachev and Team Habib, because the way they are going right now, Islam might end up by the end of his career the GOAT. Like currently he's 28-1. Well, if I'm not mistaken, John Jones is also around 28. So basically Islam by the end of this career, if he defeated one more opponent at welterweight, he would have the longest win streak. He would kinda already surpass Anderson Silva, and most people consider, especially the Brazilian, consider Anderson Silva to be the GOAT. Then you have Islam winning the title at welterweight, similar to what GSP has achieved, and then he might dwarf John Jones' record, which is crazy to think about. Like, we are actually might be currently witnessing history in the making, the GOAT of MMA. Especially Makhachev is in lightweight previously and currently in welterweight. Previously, lightweight was the most stacked, most competitive, and imagine that he was dominant in the most competitive weight division in the UFC ever. But now, after going up to welterweight, the landscape of welterweight is becoming more and more competitive. So imagine if he dominate two weight classes in their absolutely most competitive level of contenders, he will go down definitely as the GOAT of MMA, right? So where is Islam now at pound for pound rank? And then you would see that Islam regained his pound for pound status. And number 2 there is Ilia, number 3 is Merab, 4 is Hamzat, and 5 is Pantoja. And to be honest, I kind of disagree with this pound for pound list. I will give you my list first and the reason for it. I believe Islam is number 1. Number 2 should be Pantoja, because Pantoja defended his belt for 4 times. Merab defended for 3 times. Hamzat defeated a dominant champion like in DDP, and at least maybe Ilia or Alex Pereira should be number 5. The case for Alex is because he won the middleweight, and then but he didn't defend in the middleweight. Then he moved up, won it at light heavyweight, but he loses it. And then of course he defended a few times, but he loses it to Ankalaev. But then he won again. So there's a case to put Alex at number 5. If Alex Pereira was not beaten at light heavyweight, you probably would see Alex Pereira maybe number 2 or something. It's like he's a star. However, like where should I put the Porrier then? If you compare Ilia's 3 championship fight, for example, and compare it with Islam championship fight, so you have to see it right here. Islam beat Charles Oliveira, the prime Charles Oliveira, that believed he was eliminated by God. You know what I'm saying? And then he ran through like Gaethje, Porrier. If I'm not mistaken, he won against Chandler, if I'm not mistaken. So he defended at least 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. And that Charles Oliveira was, even until now, the most decorated submission artist in the UFC. And then he go on to defend his belt against Volkanovski, that has not lost for 22 consecutive MMA fight. So he beat Alexander Volkanovski's 22. He took that win streak from him. And now, if you discounted Porrier and then Moicano, you just take Jack for example. Jack has 18 win streak, and all together, this just 3 opponents, you got 51-0. 51-0. Islam took out 51-0 win streak from his opponent. And if you compare to Ilia's championship record from his opponent, Ilia fought Volk, a compromise vote that just lost to Makhachev by head kick. So Volk at that time had 1 loss. Ilia fought Max. The thing is, people forgot actually Max was fighting Gaethje at 155 for the BMF. So basically Max bulked up and then have to cut to 145. And obviously the weight cut was so severe that, imagine, Max was never knocked down even, but he got knocked out by Ilia, I believe due to the weight cut. But even for whatever reason Max lost, he only had 3 win streak. And Ilia then fought a vacated belt, against Oliveira, that only had at that time 1 win streak. So altogether, just 4 win streak and 1 loss of Ilia's championship opponent. So 51-0 versus 4 wins and 1 loss is like completely different. And people are talking right here, talking about Ilia possibly going to fight Makhachev, and to be honest, I don't believe it's a good idea. For example, right, I can already figure out what is the game plan for Makhachev, and this is not just from me. This is also from the opinion of Javier Mendez. Javier Mendez mentioned about Islam, like for example Ilia, there's a hole in his game which is kicking. So imagine like what Islam did to Volk. Like Islam was kicking the body and kicking the head, right? But for Ilia, because Ilia has this boxer stand and relies so much on his knockout power, Makhachev probably would do the same thing like he did to Jack, and then he would also incorporate the same game plan for Volk. Basically, Makhachev would probably kick the calf, kick the body, and then kick the head. I'm telling you guys, because like imagine Makhachev is southpaw and Ilia is orthodox. This is my personal opinion. If they do actually fight, Islam would have a field day, because let's say Ilia block the body shot, the body kick, and then leaving his cuff open, then his cuff will be targeted. Then all this power, anyone knows boxing would know that for boxer, the power comes from the leg. So imagine just the same like what Islam did to JDM. He completely battered the calf of JDM. And if that's the same game plan that Islam will use on Ilia, imagine he will kick his calf, and even though he might not be knocked out, like his leg will be compromised. So Ilia for the rest of the fight wouldn't have the same kind of knockout power anymore. If he checks the kick, the body or the head will be exposed. So this is not a good idea for Ilia to come out to fight Islam actually, because the fight IQ is completely different from whatever he had faced before. So for the welterweight division. So now we have a new champion. Jack is there. Obviously, he have to take a short break. I guess he will come back. Belal Muhammad and Garry would have a fight this week at UFC Qatar. So I'm not sure what will happen. But if Belal won that, I don't think Belal would fight Islam. However, if Belal chooses to still fight Islam, then it would be such a shady shit, man. Come on. Imagine like when Belal was the champ, Islam didn't want to move up because he doesn't want to fight his friend. But when Islam is champion, Islam is the champion, Belal will fight him. You know what I mean? It's kind of bit shady. So I don't think Belal will do that. So probably if Belal won, it's either Morales or Prates that will fight for the title next. But I don't think it's a good idea because we probably would see the same thing that we see with JDM versus Islam. Morales, even though he's very tall, I don't think he has the same caliber of wrestling. Similarly with Prates against Islam, you know what I mean? So I think the only best contender to fight Islam would be Kamaru Usman. I know most people won't agree with this because like, hey, Usman is number 8, buddy. But hear me out, okay? Usman, people forget, at the time of his reign, he defended like 5 times the welterweight belt. And one thing that people often forgot, he was almost always never taken down. Never. Maybe I remember one or twice, maybe once during the Colby 2, Usman versus Colby 2. But that's it, man. So what you have here is a guy that have knockout power, who can strike, and then he can defend takedowns. People forget also another thing, that Usman actually lost to prime contender Leon Edwards. And he was actually beating Leon Edwards during that fight before the unfortunate head kick. And then during the second championship fight with Leon, it wasn't very dominant. It's very close fight. And then the third loss was to Khamzat Chimaev. So, and arguably, people said that if you extend the fight to 5 rounds, Usman could have won against Khamzat. And Khamzat did mention Usman was his toughest fight. So, I don't know where this idea that Usman is washed and he could, like, he beat Joaquin Phoenix like with wrestling, and almost like what happened to Jack, but I think what Islam did was more dominant. But imagine now you have Usman and Islam together. Which way will the fight go? Obviously, even if Islam take Usman down a few times, there's very high chance that Usman might be able to get up. What would that lead to? Basically, they will strike. This is the same thing that happened with Porrier fight. So Islam, of course, he took Porrier down, but after a while, Porrier had to he stuffed the takedown. He defended very well, and it caused the fight to be more striking than grappling. Of course, by the end of it, Islam still grappled and then got Porrier into that Darce choke. But most of the fight, they had to bang, man. They have to bang. So the same thing goes here too. If Usman were to fight Islam, I truly believe it will be a very competitive match. So, coming up, we also have UFC Qatar between Tsarukyan and Hooker. So this is another banger that we will have to see. Doesn't really affect the welterweight, but it does affect Ilia, and of course, what affect Ilia might also affect Islam in the long term. Islam was asking about fighting in the White House, and obviously Ilia will be the biggest match in the UFC against Islam. But to be honest, I don't think that Ilia should get the fight that easily to fight for the third belt. I believe Ilia should deserve it by beating competitors like Arman and Paddy, for example, even maybe Gaethje. So imagine like if Ilia beat Arman. Arman has a long win streak, the number one contender, the clear number one contender, and Paddy, who, if I'm not mistaken, is still undefeated. So basically, Ilia would build his legacy of the win streak that he took from his opponent. You know what I mean? Just like Makhachev. So if Ilia and Islam both have this incredible win streak, and then he took over many opponents with win streak, so the clash between Islam and Ilia would be more exciting, in my opinion. So until then, I don't think it's a good idea to match Ilia with Islam. But anyway, this weekend we're going to see Arman fighting Hooker, and to be honest, to be honest, I don't know what to say about this match. We know Hooker can bang, Hooker can fight, Hooker can strike. He fought Dustin Porrier and we got an amazing fight at that time. But if Hooker were to win this fight, would the UFC give Hooker the title shot? Or Paddy? Or maybe Gaethje? Because I don't think Hooker, even though he's a veteran, he's not a big name star, you know what I mean? He might create problem. Anyone has a striking chance against anybody, especially Ilia. But I think Dan Hooker is such a veteran. If he really fought with Ilia, I think Ilia will win. What is the key to victory for Arman? I believe Arman can strike, Arman can dominate by grappling. The easy way, if like Makhachev always said, like Dan can strike but he might not be able to defend so much. So the best way to fight Dan Hooker will be to submit him. So I truly believe Arman can do it, but if he couldn't, it would be such a shocker, man. Seriously, it would completely change the lightweight division. And the next fight that we have is actually related to the welterweight, where Belal, currently who is number 2, would fight Garry, just like we discussed just now. Garry is long, dude. You can see the reach is 74.5 and 42 inches leg reach. So I'm really interested to see how this match pan out. Belal with amazing wrestling. If he decides to do the Canelo hand, I'm pretty sure Ian can evade it. But if he uses the wrestling, I want to see how does he use the wrestling to control Ian Garry. You know what I mean? Because Ian Garry is such a tall guy, long legs, long hands. The size you see, like 6'3" in height, while Belal is 5'11". Um, I truly want to see what is Bilal's game plan, and I believe he is a very good analyst, fight analyst. So really, I want to know who will win this, and if Bilal win it, would he challenge Makhachev or not? And if Ian Garry won, um, would he become the number one contender against Islam over Morales and Prates? These are such important questions to be answered, man. So until then, um, you're going to watch the UFC Qatar. Uh, I'm going to stop right here, and then please subscribe, like, and comment. This is a new thing. I'm still learning how to do this stuff, so any support will be welcome. Thank you for watching and listening. Thanks, guys. Bye.